in the sands of the Sahara stands one of our greatest legacies. The oldest stone structure of its kind in the world. 100 years older than its famous cousin, the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Step Pyramid, is a cornerstone in the history of civilization.
This is the most important pyramid on Earth.
And the first pyramid ever built. But now, ravaged by looters, earthquakes, and the simple erosion of time itself, this ancient skyscraper is falling apart. For 5 years, British and Egyptian experts have been battling to rescue it, putting their lives in danger and their engineering skills to the test.
What happened?
But fate has another trick up her sleeve, one that no one sees coming.
I didn't know what was going to happen. No one knew what was going to happen.
History may have thrown the Step Pyramid of Saqqara one curveball too many. Time is turning this pyramid to dust. Cairo, Africa's largest city, and a cradle of civilization, where ancient history dominates a modern skyline. 30 kilometers to the south of the city, at the ancient burial site of Saqqara, is where its history began, and where it's still in the making. Here, the race is on to save the oldest stone pyramid on Earth.
Stones are falling apart. I made a decision. No one can enter the Step Pyramid because it was so dangerous. Look at the stones, it's coming down. This part.
Saving the Step Pyramid is the obsession of one very determined archaeologist.
All my life, if I'm proud of something, I'm proud of the restoration of the Step Pyramid.
This isn't just a poor cousin to the great monuments of Giza, it's the mother of all pyramids. Built 4,600 years ago, it's one of the first monumental symbols of pharaonic power, and the prototype for all Egypt's pyramids. For millennia, it's been left alone to face the ruin of time. Until 2002, when Dr. Hawass is appointed head of the Supreme Council of Antiquities. He's determined something has to be done.
I said, if I did not do the restoration, I will insult myself and I will leave my job right away.
And so began one of the most ambitious restoration projects in Egyptian history. Above ground, the challenge is to repair the badly eroded steps, replacing thousands of stones that have fallen or been stolen over millennia. But the biggest, most dangerous restoration job is inside. Extending 30 meters underground, the secret heart of the pyramid, the king's burial chamber, is collapsing. Huge boulders are falling from the roof, threatening to crush the sarcophagus below. And leading from the chamber, a labyrinth of tunnels, many unsafe, many still unexplored. Fixing this pyramid will be a dangerous undertaking. But one team is ready to take on the job. Based in Wales, UK, Syntec are a company who specialise in fixing broken old buildings.
The idea of the foot of this then would be propped back against the scaffold.
Even for them, this is a first.
If someone said to me 50 years ago, you will actually repair the oldest structure in the world, I'd say, you've got to be joking. You really got to be joking.
The responsibility is massive, but you're coming at this project with a view to trying to solve a problem.
They have a plan to insert stainless steel anchors into the burial chamber roof, stabilising the structure from the inside out.
What we do is keyhole surgery for buildings.
Once in place, the anchors will be practically invisible, but the plan is controversial. And the Egyptian engineers in charge on site have a problem with it. They're worried the process of inserting the anchors may precipitate further collapse. Dr. Hassan oversees all restoration inside the pyramid. He has personal sign-off on whether or not to install the anchors.
You have to be cautious about the stability of the chamber, burial chamber, and the stability of the burial shaft, and of course, the ceiling.
It's been 5 years since the British engineers first visited the pyramid and began to formulate their plan for fixing it. What they find inside is a nightmare.
The crack travels down and then it shoots across this way.
A natural crack running right through this earthquake-prone structure.
So it's still recent movement then, Richard.
A 5-kilometre maze of fragile tunnels and cavernous voids.
See when you, Richard? That's collapsed in.
Another shaft down here. Where does that go?
You were just careful not to brush the walls or touch the ceiling, just in case it all come down on top of your head.
And we went down into the lower tunnels, and suddenly the lights went out.
Sweaty would really move. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Right, hold on to something.
We sat in the bottom of these tunnels for 20 minutes, waiting for something to happen. That was quite scary.
Finally, 30 metres below ground, they reach the most precious part of all. A king's burial chamber that's collapsing in on itself, burying everything beneath.
This is one of the main support beams.
And when I saw the amount of stones that had fallen from that ceiling, I just couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And then I looked up, and that was even more frightening.
You're then looking 29 metres above your head to the roof of the tomb chamber.
It just looked like it was hanging there. And I just looked at Richard and thought, this is not going to be easy.
So this isn't really very sensible, is it, standing here?
And that's really quite daunting, this thought of how do we do a repair?
Since the 1930s, the burial chamber has not only been closed to the public, but to the experts too.
It is deemed very unsafe, but I'm desperate to go in.
Salima is an archaeologist with an unusual passion.
I've always been interested in dead things, I suppose, but I think it's really fascinating how the ancient Egyptians preserved their dead. And so I made my way into mummification and have never quite left it yet.
When it comes to mummies, Saqqara has plenty.
This whole plateau is honeycombed with tombs that date from 2800 BC all the way to 400 AD. You have tombs not just for human beings, but also for sacred animals and votive animals. So you have bull burials, you have cow burials, you have baboon burials, you have ibises, dogs, cats, as well as hundreds and thousands of human beings from all periods.
4,600 years ago, a great pharaoh built the most impressive tomb of all. Ruler of Egypt in 2650 BC, King Yossa was the second pharaoh of the third dynasty. This king had the power and the means to build big. He appointed an extraordinary man to manage the project. Imhotep, a servant who would become the first known architect in history. Instead of marking the king's grave with the usual mud tombstone called a mastaba, Imhotep built upwards and skywards in stone, creating the first pyramid ever, an ancient stairway to heaven.
The king is buried underneath the pyramid. He takes the step pyramid and climb. Then he can reach the sun god.
Ever since their first visit to the pyramid, the British engineers have been making plans to return to fix it. Dennis wants to drill up to 5 meters into the burial chamber roof to insert the reinforcing stainless steel anchors.
These anchors pin all the blocks that are holding the ceiling up now and transfer that load higher up into the pyramid, preventing collapse.
The Egyptian engineers are still unconvinced. They're worried inserting stainless steel anchors could precipitate a collapse in the roof. To convince the Egyptians, the British come up with a 3-phase plan. First, they stabilize the ceiling, then deep point the loose stones, and finally drill and anchor.
Yeah, if we can we go to the bottom?
4 meters.
But even the first phase is a major challenge. The usual method of using tubular props would exert too much upward pressure on key stones that are holding the ceiling in place. Like a giant game of Kaplunk, disturb the wrong stone in here, and it could all come tumbling down. So Peter has been thinking outside the box. His idea is to temporarily support the ceiling by placing bags full of air underneath.
Because air could spread the load over big areas, I thought, well, it's got to be air.
But these are more than just toy inflatables. They're a patented design. Inside each bag are hundreds of thousands of drop-stitch nylon threads.
When you inflate it with air, it'll fill the void of each layer until it's pulling itself tight, and that's where your strength is, and that's what gives you the final size of your bag.
Not only are the bags rigid, they are also incredibly strong. Each airbag has a 3-ton capacity, and in the event of a collapse, they could hold the calculated weight of the burial chamber roof. A comforting thought when you're working in an unstable structure built in a seismic zone. In October 1992, Egypt was rocked by an earthquake measuring 5.9 on the Richter scale. Saqqara was within a few kilometers of its epicenter. Inside the Step Pyramid, over 200 tons of rubble came crashing down. If a major earthquake hit again, the effects would be catastrophic. For anyone fixing this pyramid, there is more than just history at stake. At the site of the oldest stone pyramid on Earth, restoration is stepping up a pace. Boulder by boulder, workers are replacing fallen stones. Using industrial machinery would cause too much vibration. They do everything by hand. It turns out the best way is to imitate the ancient builders. In charge is a 73-year-old man who's been a stonecutter since he was 10.
My father had an old stone quarry, and I used to work there helping him out. And when I got older, I decided to leave and go and see the Egyptian antiquities.
Hag Saeed believes the only way to fix this pyramid is to know how it was built. And the secret is in the stones.
In this pyramid here, as you can see, the angle of the stones face upwards. These stones, for example, are laid to make 2 levels. This one here makes a right angle with this one.
Each step of this pyramid was originally built at different angles of inclination. And the cut face of the stones lay inwards, pointing slightly downwards to give extra stability. In building the first pyramid on Earth, the ancients combined a sophisticated architectural plan with primitive tools. Today, Hag Saeed's team are doing the same. But inside the pyramid, it's modern engineering that's going to be put to the test. The plan is to build an immense 28-meter scaffold from the base of the burial chamber to within touching distance of the roof. This will provide the British engineers with a working platform from which to position the airbags and hopefully anchor the ceiling. A scaffold of this size needs a secure base. But at the bottom of the burial chamber is a mound of rubble, beneath which lies the true heart of the pyramid, the sarcophagus that once housed the body of the king. The fateful job of removing the debris falls to the Egyptian engineers.
I mean, generally, the situation wasn't good. How would we clear the stones? How on earth could we attempt it? It was really difficult to imagine how we would get it done.
The British engineers believe the best way would be to hoist the stones upwards and out through the south entrance.
We originally thought that we could lift them from the top, and it would have been much quicker.
But the Egyptians worry the tunnel leading into the chamber is too fragile to take the weight. They opt for the long way round. Sorting all the stones by hand, they carry them one by one from the bottom of the burial chamber, along the fragile maze of tunnels, and out through the north entrance. It's a risky and potentially dangerous strategy. Above their heads, boulders hang like giant pinballs, waiting to fall. Among the rubble, they discover amazing artifacts. Intricately carved stones, human remains, and broken tombs of the pharaoh's wives and daughters. Finally, they are poised to uncover the greatest artifact of all. It's been over 70 years since archaeologists last documented the king's sarcophagus. Since then, hundreds of tons of bone-crushing debris has rained down on it, threatening to destroy the precious artifact beneath.
When we began to clean this, every week I go to this Saqqara, I asked what's happened, until one day they called me and they said that the sarcophagus began to be clear.
What's been hidden beneath the rubble is finally revealed. Tomb robbers have long since stolen the royal mummy, but the megalith coffin that contained the king's body still remains. Made up of 32 granite slabs, each weighing 3 to 4 tons. On the top, a giant circular stone, plugging the hole through which they would have lowered the body of the king. And inscribed on the stones, clues as to how it was put together.
Look at what the ancient Egyptian did. This is the word Su, which is the word that means south. And that is marks that the ancient Egyptian used to leave from the architect to be as a guide how they can reconstruct the sarcophagus.
Clear instructions would have been essential because these giant stones weren't quarried locally, but shipped to Saqqara 1,000 kilometers along the Nile from Aswan, where the best red granite in Egypt was to be found. This coffin came as a flat pack, ancient Egyptian style. For Salima, who specializes in Egyptian death rituals, seeing images of the newly cleared burial chamber is a revelation.
They're the stars. And the excavators talk about these stars as being part of an original roof. So there was an original ceiling. It was another sort of chamber above the sarcophagus chamber.
This room above, long since destroyed, was the preparation room in which the king's body was blessed before being lowered into the sarcophagus chamber.
This had probably a vaulted roof and you had stars on it. The place where the king was clearly in the afterlife. He'd moved on and he'd become one with the gods and the imperishable stars.
The newly unearthed monument provides invaluable clues in the quest to discover how exactly the king was buried. The greatest clue is the granite plug.
That's what we want to pause, really, because that's the extraordinary thing. The question is, would this hole be large enough for a mummified body that is very stiff to be brought through without damaging the body?
The size of the plug suggests that not all the sarcophagus was in place when the king's mummy was laid to rest.
Because if one's really wrapped up, if a mummy is covered with layers and layers of linen, you can't just go plop and expect that it would slide down. So there had to be people down in there to sort of receive the body and to maneuver it down through this hole, and then they would have crawled out and maybe pushed the last bit of the sarcophagus sort of top into place, and then you'd put the plug in.
Back on site, there's a problem. Now they've cleared the last pieces of rubble, the engineers confirm everyone's worst fears. The sarcophagus is damaged. Without the tightly packed rubble to hold it in place, pieces of the coffin are falling away.
We have to tighten it together, not to have any kind of collapsing.
The engineers move quickly, propping one side with steel, binding the rest together with straps and wood. It's only a temporary measure. The only long-term solution is to fix the ceiling and prevent any further stonefall. And no one is more keen to get on with it than the British engineers.
We start to put our scaffolding up.
For months now, they've been desperate to get back on site to position the airbags and persuade the Egyptians that their stainless steel anchors will reinforce the roof. But the scaffolding that will provide them with a working platform isn't even built yet.
We were in limbo at that time. You would ring up and say, how's it going? And they'd say, 2 weeks. And then you ring in 2 weeks' time, they say, well, how long? 2 weeks. So eventually you say, okay, give us a ring when it really is finished.
We were at home waiting and waiting and waiting.
At last, and surprisingly, there's a breakthrough.
Hello? Give us a phone call, out of the blue. Scaffolding's up. Can you come out? Scaffolding's up. I couldn't believe it. To get onto a platform.
Finally, they have a working platform.
Bye.
An emergency meeting is called. Braving a freezing Welsh winter, the Egyptian engineers arrive to see for themselves what the airbags can do.
We will not at all exert an upward pressure.
We're not going to jack it up.
We're
just touching it.
The trick will be when we go inside.
They also bring with them detailed images of inside the pyramid. From the top of the scaffolding, they've been able to shoot the first ever close-up pictures of the burial chamber roof.
The rocks have slid and wedged themselves, haven't they?
These are very interesting photographs. Amazing.
The ceiling is far more irregular than they imagined.
There's no connection whatsoever.
Positioning the airbags will be a major challenge, but doing nothing is not an option.
We don't have any support right now. So if we have major earthquake, of course, the stability of this roof would be in jeopardy. Yeah.
Each airbag is tested, approved, and shipped to Egypt, marked urgent.
So I assembled all the gear, and it arrived there. I booked my flights for January the 7th, and everything went the revolution.
On January the 25th, 2011, thousands of anti-government protesters occupied Cairo's streets. They call for the resignation of President Mubarak, who's held power in Egypt for over 30 years. After 18 days of violence, Mubarak cedes to the crowd's demands and resigns. But the anarchy continues, putting Egypt's historic treasures at risk. Cairo Museum is attacked by thieves who take advantage of the chaos.
On January 29th, I was between the people, and I tried to protect the museum, and the young people protected the museum with me.
Outside the city, the situation is also critical.
All the police and the military abandoned archaeological sites, and this was really a terrible thing.
Half fixed, half broken, the Step Pyramid is more vulnerable than ever. The looters attack.
The first day when the criminals and the thieves entered Saqqara, they opened the tomb of Ti. They opened the tomb of Meneruka. They opened all this famous tomb.
Throughout Egypt, the chaos continues.
And I was watching on the telly and I was getting scared. Scared because there was no police there. All my equipment was there. Was it still going to be there when I got back into the country?
Our agents didn't know any better as well. We could ring them and say, what's going on? They said, we have no idea.
And the question then was, how long is this situation going to prevail before we can actually get there and intervene?
I said to myself, Saqqara is finished.
Abandoned, laid bare again by savage history, in the story of this pyramid, maybe the final die is cast. 4 months later, the worst of the violence in Cairo recedes. Egypt is moving on. Now, at last, the British engineers get the call they've been waiting for.
And they keep ringing me every week. Mr. Dennis, we need you out here, we need you out here. So we travelled in May.
A quick check confirms that their luck has held. The equipment survives untouched. After so much uncertainty, they can finally get on with the job of installing the airbags. From the scaffolding that now fills the burial chamber, they get a close-up view of the challenge ahead.
It was actually the first time that we had been in there and seen what we were up against.
The higher they go, the worse it gets.
We went up the ladder to the top deck. We just sat on the scaffolding, looking at the surrounding roof structure, which was nothing like we thought it was going to be.
And I looked up at the ceiling. Now you're only inches from it, and there was just lots of mud, lots of clay, and it was frightening.
And there was just this weird feeling. You felt as if there was a presence in there, and it wasn't me and Dennis, put it that way.
I don't like it up here.
From that on, we thought, well, let's just get on with it and see what we're going to do.
I didn't touch it.
But before they start to install the airbags, Dennis must adjust the scaffolding. Right now, there's nothing anchoring it to the burial chamber wall, and it's moving. Too much for Dennis's liking.
Anyone going down the stairs or anything introduced so much vibration and swaying into the scaffolding.
There's too many people up here. It's safety. He's on about all this safety.
Get out here, otherwise we're not starting.
Dennis insists that they install reinforcing braces to minimize movement.
We don't want any vibrations in here.
Though that carries its own risks.
Everything shakes.
The pressure is on to install the airbags as soon as possible.
Until I had them in, no one was safe.
They start at the very top of the chamber. The irregular shape of the ceiling means it's impossible to get a perfect fit. Dennis and Mike carefully pack the voids with high-density foam. Any upward pressure could dislodge the fragile stonework.
There was rocks falling. You'd only have to bump your head on when it'd fall down.
With every bag they install, that danger recedes a little. But the ceiling is so unsafe, it's a much bigger job than they planned for.
Because I wanted more of it supported, I didn't have enough airbags.
Dennis has to call time out.
I think that's enough for today. My heart rate needs to go down a bit.
We're going home.
There's lots more to do, but already the bags are taking some of the pressure. When all 18 are in position, they could, in the event of a collapse, hold the calculated weight of the ceiling above. But they're only as strong as the scaffolding they sit on. And this one isn't built on solid rock. Previously, while clearing fallen debris from around the sarcophagus, the Egyptian team made an incredible discovery. A tunnel extending directly underneath the 100-ton stone coffin of the king.
We discovered this tunnel. This tunnel was completely blocked. And therefore, we didn't know really how it looked like under the sarcophagus.
They realized the tomb didn't rest on rock, but was precariously balanced on 18 limestone pillars. Building a 28-meter scaffolding on top of this fragile base seemed like madness. But that's exactly what was done here. To hold the weight of the massive steel structure, the floor was reinforced with hundreds of sandbags, packed tightly beneath and around, creating a solid base upon which to build upwards to within touching distance of the roof. under which the race to restore the pyramid is entering a new and dangerous phase. The British engineers want to drill into the burial chamber roof and insert stainless steel anchors for a permanent fix. But they have yet to convince the Egyptians of their plan. The final decision will rest with Dr. Hassan, and right now he's worried that drilling directly into the ceiling would cause dangerous vibrations, perhaps even a collapse. Test after test is called for.
We're trying to find which one is the optimum speed to give the least amount of vibration.
The decision to drill or not won't be made quickly. No one wants to make a mistake.
We're going to drill the next one on a solid surface.
Meanwhile, there's other critical work to be done. Before boring holes in this pyramid, Dennis must stabilize the most precarious stones that are hanging as if by magic from the burial chamber roof. They'll use fresh lime mortar to fill the voids between the stones, gluing them together. But first, they must remove the old mortar, taking it apart piece by piece.
These are the scary bits.
To get into this corner of the burial chamber, Dennis has had to move the airbag that was supporting it. And now he's worried.
Because these stones are just hanging there now.
And it's a much bigger job than they first imagined.
Now we are opening a big gap. Okay.
Some of these gaps were 1 meter deep and 500 mil wide.
No, it's too much. I can put all my arm on it.
We were using a lot of lime mortar.
Plastic tubes are used to pump grout into the biggest voids. With each stone that's secured, Dennis feels a little safer. Though in this pyramid, there's no such thing as completely safe.
What happened? Stone. A new one, a new one.
Every day is a challenge.
But sometimes it isn't all about engineering.
To make them act as a unit.
In the last few weeks, Dennis has been getting hands-on with history in a way most archaeologists can only dream of. And he's made what he thinks may be an important discovery. A hole in a corner of the burial chamber roof, behind which is a void extending some 6 meters into the ceiling. It could be an unusual collapse of stones, or it could be purpose-built. Another chamber or a shaft perhaps leading to who knows where. Before drilling into it, Dennis wants some specialist advice. And mummy expert Salima is only too happy to help. While restoration work is ongoing, she can't enter the pyramid. But this may be the next best thing.
It looks really narrow.
It's very confined, but it just continues up as far as we can see.
So it sort of goes up like a chimney?
It looks like a chimney.
Okay.
Draws up.
In later pyramids, such as these in Giza, the burial chambers have northward-facing shafts, along which some believe the king's spirit can ascend to the afterlife. Could this be what lies behind this void?
So wait, so you mean this is like the passages in the Great Pyramid, so this would be a precursor?
This is facing north as well.
Really?
And they like it to face north.
Yeah, of course, that's the entryway, that's the North Star, that's where you become one with the stars. Oh, how nice.
Only when it's fixed will archaeologists be able to investigate this pyramid's many mysteries. On the outside, day by day, progress is reaching new heights. While on the inside, the race to restore the burial shaft is entering the most critical phase of all.
That's what we're trying to prevent, catastrophic collapse.
Yeah.
Syntec's plan has always been to insert stainless steel anchors to secure the burial chamber roof. But they still need final sign-off from the Egyptian experts, and they don't have it.
We need a decision. No one has said yes.
To help force a decision, Dennis has called Richard and Peter to site.
Actually drilling some holes in the pyramid chamber was a major step. I think the most dangerous areas were the stones that apparently had no connection to the rest of the body of stonework.
The chimney, as Dennis calls it, is a real worry.
This is very fragile. It's all tenuously held together.
There can be no more delays.
What we need now is someone to say go.
The engineers must decide whether to drill or not.
These are going to be working anchors. I'm going to install anchors in these today. So it's a cable we're putting in.
Yeah.
A deal is struck.
All right.
Okay.
Let's start the second.
The first anchor will be drilled in the far corner of the chamber wall. An X marks the spot.
They'd come to this position where they were now willing, and not only willing, but keen for us to get on with it.
But then it come the day of the drilling. It was just taking it really carefully.
This time, Dennis's right-hand man is drilling technician Malcolm.
If somebody had told me 20 years ago that I'd be doing this inside a pyramid, most people don't even get to walk around one, let alone go inside and drill holes in it.
But above the hole is a wooden beam surrounded by loose mortar.
They wouldn't let us remove the mud from that beam because that mud is archaeology. So I was nervous.
The Egyptians install measuring equipment to ensure the vibrations don't exceed safe levels. And Dr. Hassan wants to witness proceedings.
Good morning, Dr. Hassan.
Good morning.
Ready?
Finally, the moment that has been so long in the making. They begin to drill. Malcolm knows that in this game of Russian roulette, it's his finger on the trigger.
When you're drilling, it's very sensitive. It's not just a case of rock drilling. You have to put yourself in front of that drill bit and imagine what that drill bit is doing. Any moment, you could have tons of rock coming around your ears.
And he has a unique way of thinking about the job.
The drill is like a good woman, and if you push it too hard, it screams.
Any screams in here are indicative of high levels of vibration, the very thing the team want to avoid.
You just know that that noise is going to come, and I'm not going to let my finger off that trigger quick enough.
Beyond the depth of the first stone, they'll be working blind.
Because you didn't know what was between those stones. No one did. No one had taken this pyramid apart.
Suddenly the sound everyone's been dreading. Malcolm has hit some old mortar that contains extremely hard pieces of flint, and it's causing serious vibrations.
Flint is one of the hardest materials to drill. We can drill it if it stays in one place. If it's bouncing around, it's impossible to drill.
Suddenly, the vibrations peak. Dr. Hassan demands that they stop.
I prefer to stop.
Stop?
Oh, don't.
Okay, we need to secure this stone.
Yeah.
We're not moving this stone. It's this loose mud on the top of it that's coming down, isn't it? See? It's loose anyway, so it's...
I was thinking we might be going home at any moment, you know.
Your emotions are torn between, are they going to kick us off site as having done some damage, or are they going to embrace the fact that some damage may occur, but it's inevitable.
But Dr. Hassan is now committed.
Okay.
He gives the go-ahead to resume drilling. At last, they break through the flint. But the drilling has taken much longer than they planned.
And we ran out of time to install the anchor that night. I always worry about things. You know, if something happens in the pyramid, I'll think about it that night. I was worried about that hole that we drilled and leaving it open, because we've taken something out of the pyramid without putting anything back.
We were really keen to get those anchors in because those stones were defying gravity. You just can't afford that.
Built 4,600 years ago, the Step Pyramid is a foundation stone in the history of architecture. It's why people are risking all to rescue it. But Dr. Hawass and his team are not the first to try. All through the burial chamber, there's evidence of previous restorations that took place thousands of years ago. By then, the the step pyramid was already an ancient structure.
When the ancient Egyptian in the side period 500 BC found out that this room is falling down, and that's why they put this to hold the stones. This is dated back 2,500 years ago.
But there's one piece of wood that's an anomaly, a plank amongst all the tree trunks.
You can't get a support in there.
To make way for the restoration, Dennis has asked the archaeologists to remove it, only to discover when the millennia of debris is wiped away that this plank has a story all of its own. One that Salima is delighted to explain.
It's a coffin.
It is it?
It's a coffin of the late period, probably 26th or later. Can you go next? Oh, wait, go back. Oh, that's probably the dead person. Techen something?
Some of the hieroglyphs are instructions for the dead person in the afterlife.
I shall not walk backwards. I shall not stand upside down. I shall not eat excrement. Those are all things that they say. Obviously, one needs to look at the text more carefully, but we can try and at least start to understand what went on.
Next morning, Dennis is back on site preparing to install the first of the stainless steel anchors in the burial chamber roof.
I don't want that down.
Inserted up to lengths of 5 meters, they will pin the loose rocks together and transfer the weight of the ceiling higher up into the pyramid, preventing further collapse. Each piece of stainless steel is covered with a mesh sock that will be pumped with liquid grout. Inside the ceiling, this grout will expand to take on the shape of any voids between the stones, bonding them together. Dennis knows how badly this burial chamber needs it.
Every time one of the anchors goes in, I feel a bit more safer.
It will take 72 anchors to secure the whole roof, and the first are the most critical.
Getting the first 2 anchors in place is a major step because you've almost demonstrated then this system will work.
After centuries of decay, it's come down to a battle against the clock. The grout must be cooled to around 17 degrees Celsius. Not an easy job in Egypt.
The temperature of the water out here from the tap is about 24 degrees, which is too warm to mix the grout, so we have to use ice to cool the water down.
If it's left too long, the grout goes off and won't flow around the anchor. Each of the anchors can take a capacity of up to 8 tons. It gently does it. Debris could have gathered in this hole overnight, and if the sock rips, the anchor will be ineffective. At last, they inject the grout and start to plug the holes.
That's the first one.
Yep, one done.
The race to save this pyramid is not over, but an end is in sight.
That was the trickiest one, that first one going in. And it's just a case of repeating itself now.
Brilliant.
It's been 5 years since the British and Egyptian engineers teamed up to fix this pyramid. Since then, they've cleared 350 cubic meters of rubble, replaced thousands of boulders, pointed, drilled, and anchored the first stone pyramid ever built. Together, they have performed architectural surgery, leaving the smallest of scars.
We had all the ingredients, the technical challenges, the rebellion. This is the most important job we've ever done.
When all the anchors are in position, the airbags can be deflated, the scaffolding removed, and the burial chamber guaranteed protection for a few more centuries.
It's that buzz that goes through the company that you feel, yeah, you've done something that's really amazing.
Personally, just having the experience of working on this monument has been wonderful.
Rescued from turning to dust, this pyramid's many secrets are ready to be revealed.
I think we should open the step pyramid to the public. It belongs to everyone all over the world.
It's always nice to see these buildings given a new lease of life. And we've just given this one a new lease of life.